Hi everybody, this is Miss Mary back again with another virtual story time from Midpoint Libraries. Are you having a fun summer? I am. Oh my gosh, I've done so many cool things. And I was thinking that this week, you know how we've had a theme for each week of our summer? This week is Kayak Week. So I brought some songs and books about boats. Are you ready for a story? If you're ready for a story, paddle your boat. If you're ready for a story, paddle your boat. If you're ready for a story and you want us all to know, if you're ready for a story, paddle your boat. Alrighty. So I thought that I would read some books about kayaks because that's our theme for this week. And then you know what I found? We have books about kayaks. We do. We've got quite a few. But they're not books that really work well for virtual story time. So I thought, let's expand it to all kinds of boats. So I have today a book called Up the Creek. This one was written for us by Nicholas Oldland. He also did the illustrations. And it comes to us from Kids Can Press. Up the Creek. There once was a bear, a moose, and a beaver who were the best of friends, though they often disagreed. One sunny day, the bear, the moose, and the beaver decided to go canoeing. The canoe is this kind of boat. Have you ever been in a canoe? I have. It's kind of fun. So the moose wanted to steer, and to steer you have to sit at the back. The moose wanted to steer, but so did the bear and the beaver. They all sat in the stern. Stern is another word for back of the boat. With so much weight in the back of the canoe, it flipped, and they all ended up in the water. So they played eeny, meeny, miny, moe, and it was decided that the moose would steer. They settled back into the canoe, and they began to paddle. The bear insisted on paddling port side. That means on the left. But the beaver and the moose also preferred the left. With everyone paddling on the same side, they went around in circles. Oh dear. Soon their arms grew tired, so they began to switch sides. That's when they finally started to travel in a straight line. Just as they began to make progress, they came to stop at a beaver dam. Now, I want to pause there and say that the house you live in is called a house or maybe an apartment. And what a beaver lives in is called a dam. All right? It's not a bad word. I know it sounds like a bad word, but it's a different word. Okay? It just means a beaver's house. Well, they all had different ideas for how to get across this. The beaver wanted to push the canoe, but that didn't work. The moose thought that they should pull the canoe, but that didn't work. Fortunately, the bear figured out the only way across was to portage. That means to carry the canoe. See how they carried it above their heads? All right. Back in the water, the bear, the moose, and the beaver settled into a rhythm and started to really enjoy paddling along the river. But it wasn't long before they began to argue. They argued so loudly that they didn't notice the current was growing stronger, or they also didn't notice the quiet rumbling in the distance. They didn't notice it until it was too late. The river had turned into wild, white water rapids. What's going to happen? Let's find out. They were thrown sideways, underwater, through the air, and everywhere. The bear, the moose, and the beaver held on for their lives. That looks kind of crazy, doesn't it? Look at that boat going upside down, and here, and that moose is surfing on top of the boat. That's kind of silly. Exhausted and bruised and wet, the three friends landed on a rock in the middle of the rapids. The moose wanted to burn the canoe to make a signal fire. The bear wanted to throw the beaver to get some help. The beaver figured that swimming to shore would be safer. They argued over whose plan was best well into the night. The next morning, it dawned on the bear and the moose and the beaver that they would have to work together to make it home safely. So they climbed back into their battered canoe, took a deep breath, and ran the rapids. They twisted, leaped, crashed, and blasted through the water. Look at all the funny things that happened to them. The rapids were fierce, but with the bear's powerful strokes and the moose's steady hoof and the beaver's clear commands, they set a true, clear course. And at last, the bear, the moose, and the beaver made it to shore. Looks like their canoe got broken, and so did their paddles. After a much needed nap, the bear, the moose, and the beaver worked together to repair their canoe and paddles. They caught some fish, and they cooked lunch. Before they tucked into their meal, they all gave thanks for the wildest adventure they had ever had. Rested and relaxed, the bear, the moose, and the beaver were ready to set out for home. After taking a long look at the raging rapids, they decided to walk. And who could disagree with that? That's called Up the Creek by Nicholas Oldland. You know what I like about that story is how the three friends, they argued and they had their differences, but they worked it out and they talked to each other about, how they could make everything work together. They figured out that everybody having a certain job and everybody taking turns and finally listening to each other, that solved a lot of their problems. Have you ever heard a grown-up use the term, they might say, oh, we're up a creek, or we're up a creek without a paddle? That's a way of saying, oh, we are in a tricky spot and we need to figure out how we're getting out of it. And that's the name of this book, and that's what this group of friends did, right? They were in a sticky spot and they figured out how to get out of it. So I was thinking that for our song today, we could sing a song that you probably know, and I recently learned some new words too, because I didn't go to summer camp, and I guess that's where you learn these things. So, do you know the song, Row, Row, Row Your Boat? I'll bet you do. You ready to do some motions? Now, you can row your boat like this, like the bear and the moose and the beaver did, over one side and then over the other. Or if you're alone in a boat, you might use two paddles or oars at the same time, okay? I'm probably gonna do it this way because that's easier for me, and this is too much of a workout, okay? So are you ready? Let's sing Row, Row, Row Your Boat. It's got lots of good rhyming words in it. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Now we're gonna add in some different words. They have rhymings. Let's see if we can do it together. Row, row, row your boat gently up the creek. If you see a little mouse, don't forget to squeak. Squeak! Creak and squeak rhyme. Let's keep going. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. If you see a crocodile, don't forget to scream. Ah! Stream and scream, they rhyme. One more. Row, row, row your boat gently to the shore. If you see a lion, don't forget to roar. Roar! I had to include that part about the lion, right? Because Shakespeare is our lion mascot at Midpoint. I know. I always try to get lions in wherever I can. So I have another book for you today, and this is a non-fiction book. That means it's a book of true facts. Do you remember? Fiction books tell you a story. Non-fiction books teach you something. So this is a pretty simple one. It's called Boats. It's from the Let's Go series. And this one was written for us by Tessa, Kenan, and it's from the publishers of Tadpole Books. All right? Boats. Boats float. Have you ever been on a boat like this? This is a river boat. These were popular, 100, 200 years ago, I guess. And the way this boat gets through the water, because it's really big, look, there's 3 floors, maybe 4 floors on that. That's really tall. It's taller than my house. The way this one moves is not by people with paddles, but this big paddle wheel at the back that turns and moves the water, or rather moves the boat through the water. Sometimes you'll see those if you go down to Cincinnati. Sometimes you'll see those on the river. So all boats float. They help us to move on the water. Have you ever been on a speedboat? I have been. They go pretty fast. Boats can help us to fish. Have you been on a boat like this? Yeah. Boats can help us to travel. This is a giant cruise ship. We don't see those where we live because those are on the ocean. Have you ever been on one of those? I have. It was pretty fun. It's like a hotel on the water. Boats can help us to pull. So you see this giant boat here that has all kinds of things that are being shipped from one country to another. But this little boat here is called a tugboat. And when this giant boat comes to the land, it needs to go just in the exact right place. Kind of like when your grown-up parks a car in a parking space, they have to get in just right. Well, this little boat called a tugboat helps that boat, the big boat, get into just the right place. Boats can help us to sail. Have you ever been on a sailboat? I haven't done this one. But, you know, the boats that we've been talking about that people are in where you use paddles, or the speedboat has a motor on the back, and sometimes fishing boats have motors on the back. A sailboat usually doesn't have a motor. It moves by the wind blowing this giant piece of fabric called a sail. Boats can help us to have fun. These are river rafts, I think. Yeah. And you can go down the Whitewater River like Bear and Moose and Beaver did in our first book. But they can be kind of dangerous, so you always want to wear a helmet for those. Anyway, those are boats, all different kinds of boats. So I was thinking that maybe our activity for this week, well, you know what? Let me take a look at our map. Do you remember your Odyssey Adventure log where you can keep track of all of your reading and other activities? We've talked about this every week. You can mark off 3 spaces, I think, because you can mark off a space for a book and another space for another book that we just read. And you're watching this on our YouTube channel, so I don't know, read the back. There's all kinds of stuff you can mark off. So I was thinking that maybe this week for an activity, we could choose one of the things in our program guide, something that's going on this week, and go and participate in that, whether it's a story time in the park, or go to a story walk, or go to a story time, all kinds of cool things going on in here, and you can mark that off. How about that? You could draw a picture of a boat. That might be fun too. Anyway, thanks for joining me for Stories and Songs today. And next week, we're going to learn about an animal that lives in the ocean and looks kind of like this. Does anybody know what that is? We'll find out next week. All right, everybody. See you later, alligator, after a while, crocodile. Give a hug, ladybug, blow a kiss, jellyfish. See you soon, big baboon, out the door, dinosaur. Take care, polar bear, wave goodbye, butterfly. Bye-bye, everybody.